Hey guys, I'm Andrew. I'm going to talk about merchant adoption. I do a few other projects in the space now. I work at NewsBTC. I'm doing a coin and a few things, but my first major project in the Bitcoin industry was trying to make businesses accept Bitcoin. That was long before we got into smart contracts and property and things like that, and we envisioned it that way at first before it kind of exploded and all these new applications arose. Quick up, who here has been a customer at a business that accepts Bitcoin? Ouch, I was really hoping for more. Part of the way...
Wait a minute, stop. All of you here are at Bitcoin Wednesday, and we accept Bitcoin.
That counts.
So it's 100%. Everyone raise your hand. I really have to say that.
Good call. But yeah, the original idea of Bitcoin was that before we started to recognize the versatile uses of the blockchain. And so I'm from Vancouver. I don't know how many of you have been there, but we have a lot of bars and cafes and stuff accepting Bitcoin. And our methods, you would be surprised, are typically not very technical at all. It's very a social thing. We established a tight-knit community around this. For example, if you go and visit a place that accepts Bitcoin, or I'll tell you straight up, most of the places you'll go to, bars, cafes that accept Bitcoin, do not care about Bitcoin. At least not in the sense that they care about it being more efficient or technologically adept. Most of them just want you to come there. And you'll find that the majority of Bitcoin businesses are like this. Like if you showed up at one and said, I'm not going to pay in Bitcoin, but I'm here because you accept it, that will work. And that's actually very common. For most of them, it's a PR mechanism. So a good way, the easiest way to help spread Bitcoin adoption is to go to bars and pay in Bitcoin, or tell them you would and that you're there for that reason. And meetups like this are a good mechanism. They love having meetups. You'll find that in most cities, the majority of businesses accepting Bitcoin are meetup venues at which it's easy to galvanize the local community to arrive there. A lot of them, if you've heard of Groupon or Live in Social or things like that, where the business owner is open-minded to new PR mechanisms, you'll find that those are good people to look at. When I started, I actually had, and this is difficult to replicate, but if you have any established meetup or nonprofit or social connections, those can be very valuable as well. When we started, it was called the Bitcoin Co-op, and I had a large network of friends who owned bars, nightclubs, cafes, because I was an existing meetup organizer. Some of our meetups are large. One has over 20,000 members, so that gives us a lot of pull and clout with these venues. And there was an early adopter in my city. His name was Adam, no last name, so you don't rob him. But he bought 1,000 coins early on. And his plan was simple. I have coins, I want other people to have coins, let's promote this. And I saw him reaching out, and I said, I have a lot of friends who own bars and venues. Should I make them accept Bitcoin? And he got real excited and said, yes, please, do that immediately. And we proceeded to make kind of a campaign out of it. And the first thing you'll notice, we didn't make a business out of it. And this was kind of important. It's a business in that he had a lot of coins, so he's promoting his investment, obviously. But as soon as you enter an establishment, they can tell from your body language, your tone of voice, if your goal here is more so to make money or more so ideological. And if they detect that agreeing to your adoption is a direct profit mechanism for you, they're likely to say no just to be a jerk about it. That's how humans are. People don't like salesmen. So we tried to make it fun, make events out of it, make it random sometimes. We also, and again, this is hard to replicate if no one's backing you to do this. We got a lot of tablets, and we went to each place, so if they said, I don't have a POS system, we would just give them one. And that became very effective. We limited their reasons to say no to us. And it started, we had some cool wins, like, I don't know if you guys heard of RoboCoin. We had the world's first Bitcoin ATM in Vancouver. We put that at the Waves Coffee House. The Waves Coffee House, my meetups bring them about 300 customers a week. They'll probably go bankrupt if we leave. So I told them to accept Bitcoin. You know, it's kind of twisting their arm a bit, but I mean, it's not like they pay me to bring them 300 customers a week. It's a nonprofit that helps the community out of the goodness of my heart. So I was perfectly willing to leave. But in the end of the day, they chose to accept, and it turned to be great for them. Another thing I can mention, saying you've heard, it's easier to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Exactly what we did. We did not tell Waves the corporation, this is a franchise, that we were signing up their franchisees around the city. They figured it out from the news. They saw themselves in the news, and they came and said, hey, did you put an ATM here? You didn't really clear that with us. And we said, yeah, look how much money it made. And they're like, oh, well, that's fine then. And you know, sometimes you gotta do it like that a little bit. But he also detected that it was good for him, it was good for the local community, and we really limited the reasons to say no. Media efforts are very important. I also work at News BTC, so I have some, I can promise to help publicize you if you accept Bitcoin. Early on, we also had a guy in the local newspaper, so if you see the tattoo, that was a ploy there too. We went to the tattoo parlor. If you accept Bitcoin, I will get a Bitcoin tattoo, and we'll put you in the local newspaper. Why not? I will pay you to give you free publicity. Doesn't that sound like a great deal, right? The first tattoo parlor said no, actually. But the second one said yes, and it turned out to be great for him, right? We had... Again, these are all resources. We tapped one at a time. They can be expended. We had a journalist in the local newspaper who owned Bitcoins. So if you accepted Bitcoin, we'd make a story out of it. Eventually, they fired him, because that's kind of conflict of interest. But you get the idea. You need to be passionate. People like it when you're passionate. Again, they're trying to join the Bitcoin community very specifically, from the perception that they'll gain new customers, new friends, people to retweet them, people to like their page. It's their whole motive. So methods like that are very effective. Even in Vancouver, there's no one wallet we recommend. We have an open source one we'll give them, but eventually they all started to prefer BitPay, because BitPay's system was a little more advanced than our open source system. But the key was, it's kind of a kickstart. With any, kind of like a social network, Bitcoin adoption is similar. Once one business does it, you can say to the other business, well, he does it. It's not that crazy. So you kind of take stepping stones like that, There's another city in the Netherlands. Have any of you guys been to Arnhem? Southeast of here. They employ similar tactics. They've been doing a really good job. I just visited them. They have a whole map where you can see every Bitcoin accepting business in the city. I tried to visit all of them, it was too hard. But you can. And if you go, they love it when you do that. They love the idea that you came for that reason, and you can see the excitement kind of. I even had one bar I went to that I ended up paying with credit card because my data went down. I couldn't access my wallet. But I was just very careful to just talk about Bitcoin the whole time, So these methods, if you want to push adoption, really, in my opinion, the best way to do it is just not to be aggressive, but to be, put your time where your ideology is. People can tell these types of things. If there is a Bitcoin bar or hotel or anything like that in your city, I recommend going there whenever you can. Make a thing of it. Have a meetup there. And it's fun. I mean, you have to spend Bitcoins. That's not fun. But you can buy them back. And yeah, it's not really a complicated thing. I just want to encourage people to do that and push this concept. You know, if you want to spread merchant adoption, it's a very community-driven kind of idea, and I encourage you all to go. I don't know, does anyone have any questions?
Grab the mic for a sec. Yeah, you stated R&M in your speech.
Mm-hmm.
I read on the internet, like in January, they stopped, Bitcasa stopped like the process in R&M because they got too high of fees, and they stopped the transactions on accepting Bitcoin because it was not reliable anymore. What do you think about your vision on that? Because if like the price is going to go skyrocket again, what will happen with the transaction fees, etc., and what will that do to the all-run transactions in coffee shops and buying a cup of coffee or anything small?
That is kind of an issue, but they probably stopped the machine, so people stopped paying with Bitcoin. But as long as people continued to go and claim, I like Bitcoin, and I'm here because I heard you do, that's all they care about. And now, so that was like a kind of a bad period. We had to weather that period, a storm. And the fees are back down now. That's no longer really a serious issue. But for a while there, it kind of was, where everyone would come and no one would pay with Bitcoin, but we'd still have meetups there. But I don't, long term, I don't think the price of Bitcoin going high is likely to have a negative effect on its viability as a transactional currency. Things like Lightning are already taking off. We do that in Vancouver, so a lot of our merchants are on Lightning now, which is great, right? So it's instant. It's still pretty wonky, but in that regard, it solves a lot of such problems. And there's a lot of people working, there's a lot of wallet people and off-chain solutions providers that are solving these types of problems. I don't see it being difficult in the long run.
Yeah, to get in on that, you have a lot of discussion between the Lightning Network from Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash. What is your vision on those two parts? Like, if Lightning won't strike like what Bitcoin Cash is delivering, do you think people will stop using Lightning then? In the specific area you're talking about?
I mean, personally, I don't have a very strong opinion on the cash versus core divide. I'm a currency pluralist, free market, the best fork will win. Yeah. But we've not seen any serious, to be honest, most merchants don't know what Bitcoin Cash is. Sorry if you like cash and that hurt your feelings, but that's the truth. Lightning hasn't been difficult for them either. I think, and by the end of the year, we're gonna see lots of people using Lightning. I mean, we already set it up at a food truck, so I know it's possible. It's just people are delaying in their willingness to adopt the standards of it and try to push it. And there's a lot of disagreements in this community that kind of delays that type of thing. But it itself is really valuable, I think. Like, I'm guessing, especially for low value items, right? If you are buying like a car or a house, Lightning is less necessary. If you're going to a coffee shop, then it becomes a lot more necessary, right? You cannot wait a long period of time, and no one is gonna try to double spend you for a $3 coffee. If someone does figure out a way to manipulate or game that system, or if it crashes, in those scenarios, the losses are small. And really, no one will, right? If you had the power to launch such an attack, you would not do it for a coffee. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, here.
Howdy.
Hi. Typically, what do they do, the merchants with the Bitcoin? So they get the Bitcoin as a revenue, but of course they pay the bills with the euro. So do you have?
Well, you know, it varies. In Vancouver, I'd say about 50% of our merchants keep the coins. This is probably something I should have mentioned more. The idea of creating a loop, circular economy, wherein it's not necessary to cash out to euro or the local fiat. Our first step in Vancouver has been we got a brewery on Bitcoin. So if you go to any of our Bitcoin bars and order a good company lager, he can resupply himself with Bitcoin. You know, the next step would, I guess, would get the guy who works at the brewery to go drink at the bar, and then we'd have it full circle, right? It's very difficult to get there because it requires a lot more coordination from different parties on different levels. For now, you know, it hasn't been much of an issue for various reasons. One, it's actually really easy to convert to fiat, at least in Vancouver. We've got the rates down really low. There's like dozens of ATMs around the city. But again, it's also the fact that a lot of people will come and say they're here because you accept Bitcoin, but pay in fiat anyway. And we've found that in that regard, the volume hasn't been hard for us to deal with. In Vancouver, we would often handle it ourselves. So like one of us will show up and take your coins and give you cash. It sounds like a lot of work, except in that, like I mentioned, the volume isn't that great most of the time. Or when it is, they're comfortable with using an exchange. Yeah. Does anyone own a business that's thinking of accepting Bitcoin but doesn't yet? You? What kind of business? Oh, consulting. Well, that's pretty easy. It's like hourly fee. So why have you not chosen to accept Bitcoin? Oh, you do? Okay. Now, I was trying to look for an answer. Who has like a physical venue, a bar, a restaurant, a cafe, and doesn't accept Bitcoin, and why? I mean, has anyone paid you in Bitcoin for your services? Well, that's good. Do you cash out? That's a smart man. What year did you start doing that?
That it will evolve and become something larger. That's my belief. Simple.
That's good. I believe that too. I don't know if we don't have any more questions. So, do we? This person?
I commend you for going around to businesses and asking for them to accept Bitcoin, because I'm sure that a lot of people in this room have done the same thing, but hit a brick wall and stopped. But I just want to ask, what are your personal feelings on the block size debate? Because I feel like I've been turned into a liar for everyone that I've tried to bring on board, because I sold them, you know, low fees, fast transactions. And now I feel like I'm backtracking or now selling them something else.
Why didn't you hook them up to Lightning?
Because that's selling them something else.
Oh, that was a question. You know, when I first, the way I explained that to the merchants was I wanted to make it clear that Lightning was Bitcoin, that I wasn't selling them something else. I tried to explain and make it clear to them. And again, I wasn't selling anything. It's open source, and that helps as well, right? But I tried to make it clear this is not new. This is an upgrade of Bitcoin. That was the idea I explained to them. And if they had already accepted Bitcoin, then convincing them to accept an upgrade of Bitcoin wasn't that far of a step, right? There was some confusion at first, because so many forks of Bitcoin came out, they were afraid that it was one of those, like gold or cash or something coming at them. Personally, I'm pretty neutral in these kinds of debates, block size. I do think that a lot of the tactics some cash people I've seen use aren't effective. Like, they can be aggressive sometimes. I mean, I use tactics, but I not like in your face see the truth of cash. You know, I've been cornered at a conference in the break room trying to get coffee by a cash guy before, when I was like, I really just want coffee, please, just, you know, and it wouldn't let up. That kind of thing can be a real turnoff to some merchants. And it's too complicated. You know, there are a lot of them just think Bitcoin and they're still on the Bitcoin altcoin stage. They see no more divergence than that in their brain. There's two categories to them. And the altcoin category is scarier to them. Although long term, I think stable coins will probably be effective as a transactional thing. Because of all the liquidity issues and things like that, and not needing to cash out immediately all the time. But we haven't tried to broach that yet because the conversation will be complicated for them, and it's just easier to leave it simple.
Yeah, I have a question. So if you don't have like a rich friend with 1,000 Bitcoins, do you have like a tutorial or some way to get started with a tool set or a conversation script, something like that?
I wrote a series of articles on Bitcoin Magazine about it, how to spread merchant adoption, 3 parts. I think they're still up. I work at News BTC now, but the articles should still be there. But even without a friend with tablets, the method of being passionate and willing to make them part of a community is something anyone can do. I mean, even without the rich friend, I still had a meetup group. Everyone has different resources. If you have a meetup, if you have tablets. The hardest part of this is that there's no one person who can accomplish this, right? It had to be, I had meetups, Adam, my friend, had tablets. There was a group of us with complementary skills that we put together to accomplish this. You know, if you were to replicate this here in Amsterdam, or in the way that we tried to do it, it would require a lot of cooperation. And unfortunately, in the Bitcoin industry, that almost never happens, cooperation. It can be very difficult. We fork at the drop of the hat, right? So in that sense, I don't know, it can be very difficult. And in Canada, sometimes we can be very communal in Vancouver, so it helped us pull together like that. But even then, just go to places that accept Bitcoin. You know, dedicate yourself to that. Go visit Arnhem, like I did, and all the merchants loved it. And I think just by doing that, it incentivized other merchants. Like I walked past merchants, and they saw me skipping them because they don't accept Bitcoin. They only know what they see. They don't understand the theoretical. They don't read white papers. They have no concept of fees or transaction times. It either works or it does not to them. It's binary. It either works or does not, and if it does work, if it brings benefits, they will say yes. You know, the easiest thing you can do is provide those benefits. Tell your friends.
I have a question, actually just a follow-up of what you were saying before. I really appreciate pushing merchant adoption. I think that's a great thing. But I think selling this to people now over Bitcoin fees are too high, and Lightning is very complicated and is also not ready yet. So we have nothing to sell them, you know, as of today.
Well, BTC Pay is pretty advanced with its Lightning integration, actually, if you've heard of that one, BTC Pay. Our open source CoinOS app is a little more fidgety, but actually, you know, the tools for giving a merchant to accept Bitcoin at the point of sale level already exist, and they're not that, I mean, they're complex on the inside. We don't explain channels to them, right? All the channels and stuff is done internally. All we say is this is Bitcoin upgrade, and it has to, you can't let them have to know, they shouldn't have to understand the channels and stuff that's happening, you know?
It doesn't really seem that's not how it functions today, and a quarter of the transactions on Lightning fail. You know, that's not something we can sell to merchants today, as far as I understand it.
Do they? A quarter?
Yeah, a quarter.
I mean, it's also, I don't know, we've had not trouble. I mean, it is very experimental right now. Exactly. But if you don't, Bitcoin was very experimental at first as well. We pushed it anyway. If you don't do that, if you just rest on it, then there's it's a gradual thing. It's not going to go immediately from unusable to easy to use. It's not how it'll work. It'll gradually increase in usability, and you should be trying to spread the message all along the way. In my experience, we did have maybe like $30, $50 we had to refund when we did this in Vancouver. Not much. Most of our transactions were successful, although we had a lot of safety mechanisms in it, and we forbade you to spend more than $300 at a time, stuff like that. But eventually that won't be necessary.
I think in the meantime, the competitors will be having a good day. I'm afraid that's the last of the questions. Give the man an applause here. This is great.
Thanks.
Merchant adoption, you know?